So the target was basically... We were the target to fly over the naval gunnery range, and they would use live ammunition to shoot the target off.
Wow.
Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. And you say, I went to one of the big flying schools and learnt how to fly. They'll go, well done. So your parents are wealthy. Pushed into this little room at the front of this vehicle. I didn't know what an airplane was. I'd seen them, but inside it was amazing. And so we walked in this little room at the front, and there was all these dials and knobs and switches, and there was these three men sitting, looking at all these screens and dials. And so I'd take a mate with me, and he said, what do we do? I said, it's just a cargo run. Because if I said I'm flying dead people, he wouldn't come. So guy with the sign type thing in a captain's uniform saying, buy airline tickets like you bought toilet paper, because people were buying toilet paper during the panic. And that just went viral. So then I started promoting aviation, and I thought of things. I wanted to just promote my airline.
Hi guys, it's Matthew from Sling Pilot Academy. I'm here today with Captain Chris.
G'day.
He works at Virgin Atlantic Airline. He's a training captain on the A350 and an Instagram extraordinaire. So today we're gonna get into how he got into the career, what advice he has for you, and a little bit more. Let's do it.
I've been coming down to the Sling Academy for about 4 years now, and I remember when I first came here, it was just during the pandemic, and you had, I think, about 3 or 4 aircraft and less than 20 students. And I've just found out today you've got 53 aircraft and over 300 students in now 4 locations. And you're now the largest flying school largest growing flying school in the US.
Yeah.
That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And every time I walk in here, the vibe is just amazing. It's just a wonderful feeling of seeing people getting into aviation. Learning to fly, whether it might be their first lesson or might be just finishing off a license and going on to CFI or something like that. It takes me back to my days of learning. And the aircraft that you learn to fly in are the Sling aircraft, which are incredible aircraft. I learned to fly in a PA-28, everybody knows what they are, or a Piper PA-28, low wing aircraft, and your training aircraft looked just like the Tomahawk, which is a smaller version of the PA-28, except it's a 21st century Tomahawk. It's called glass cockpit, it's like so kitted up, and the engines are so reliable, so safe, so efficient, they burn about half the fuel, don't they?
Yeah, 3.5–4 gallons an hour.
That's nothing, absolutely nothing. With the US, you get an FAA license. If you look at a map of the world, where can you use an FAA license? It's probably about 2/3 of the countries on that map will accept an FAA license. The UK license is that little island right in the middle of the map, and the EASA license is that bit of land to the left of, or to the right of the UK. So to me, if I was a young person learning to fly in Europe or the UK, I'd come out to the States, somewhere like here, the weather's going to be good all year round, and just do your license here. 9 months it takes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To become a commercial pilot. Again, in the UK, because of the weather, it'll take up to 2 years, or sometimes they send the students out to New Zealand and Australia, because it's a little bit cheaper like here, and the US as well, but it still takes about 2 years.
Wow.
So if you want to get a license, you want to get it quick, you want to come to the US, get an FAA license, then go back to the UK or Europe, do the exams to convert your license to a EASA European license or a UK CAA license. That's the quickest, best and cheapest way to become a pilot in the UK and Europe. Plus, it gives you a story. And I say this to young people. If you go to an airline in the UK or Europe and you say, I went to one of the big flying schools and learnt how to fly, they'll go, well done. So your parents are wealthy, right? No, I'm being serious here. If you say, I went to California and we flew down to Long Beach, we flew up to Big Bear Mountain, we flew through Phoenix, we flew to all these other places you go to. You've now got 4 destinations, 4 flying schools now. You've got a story, you've got an adventure. You've flown at high altitudes, you've flown through Los Angeles International Airport. The experiences, to me, is so much better. If I was a young person learning to fly, I'd be coming here to Sling. I would. I'm not, by the way, I don't get paid for this, right? I love what you guys have developed here. And that's why I keep coming back here to see you, and that's why I'm quite happy to talk about it, because I think it's an amazing way to learn to fly. I think it's probably the best way to learn to fly.
Comparatively, how did you get into flying?
We went on a family holiday, and my family aren't wealthy, so the first time I ever went on board an airplane was when I was 12. My father pushed me up the steps in front of him onto this old Trans-Australian Airlines 727, and he said to the hostess, as they were known in those days, he said, could my boy Christopher see the cockpit? I didn't know what that sentence meant. Right, next thing I know, I'm being pushed into this little room at the front of this vehicle. I didn't know what an airplane was. I'd seen them, but inside it was amazing. So we walked in this little room at the front, and there was all these dials and knobs and switches, and there was these 3 men sitting, looking at all these screens and dials, and I realized they must be pilots, and they all turned around and said, hey, what do you want to stay here for takeoff? And my dad went, yeah, he'd love to stay here for takeoff. Obviously, my dad wanted to stay in the cockpit takeoff, but I was strapped into the seat behind the captain's seat, which is known as a jump seat. The engineer strapped me in. He was a guy looking after the engines and the systems of the aircraft, on those aircraft. And I just sat there and watched them go through their procedures, their checklists. It was all very professional. It was like a routine to it. And I thought, this is amazing. And I was just like spellbound by this incredible experience. And we pushed back and we started the engines and we got on the runway, and then this incredible noise came about as the flight engineer pushed the thrust levers forward and the captain pulled back on this stick, and I was watching everything, and we got airborne. I could see the end of the runway coming up and thinking, we're not going to get airborne, and we climbed up into the sky, and all of a sudden the noise just died away as it went behind us as we accelerated, and I just, again, I was shocked. And then once they'd obviously done their checks and put the autopilot in, all three of them turned around. They said, what do you think of that? I'm like a 12-year-old boy going, what? And they're all looking at me and I'm going, what do I say? And they say, what do you think of that? And I went, wow. And I said, can I be a pilot? And they went, yeah, of course you can. And that's, I think, what I'm finding on Instagram and so on, is telling people anybody can be a pilot. You don't have to be clever. You know, people go, oh, I'm not very good at maths. I got a D in maths, D. Right? My parents weren't too happy with that, but I got a D in maths. And it's not important what you got at school, it's what you do after school, right? In other words, I knew that I'd have to learn how to do maths, and I'd have to learn to be better at math, you call it on this side of the Atlantic, and I got better. And I learned about physics, and I learned some math, and I learned a lot of other things that I needed to get through my flying exams. And I didn't find them that difficult. And that comes from what's called aptitude. In other words, I developed an aptitude. I really wanted to be a pilot, so I thought, right, I've got to learn this stuff. It's not easy, but I've got to learn it. Bernoulli's theorem and lift equals half rho v squared s and all those other things you have to learn. But I learned it all to get through the exams. So how did I get to that point? So from the 12-year-old boy, I then got a job as I do 3 paper rounds a day. I then worked in the pub selling papers in the local pub. And then on weekends I worked at the supermarket, pushing trolleys, loading up the dairy case. I worked on building sites. My dad was a builder, so I get jobs on building sites, loading up timber and clearing up around the sites. So I got cash for that. And every bit of money I earned went to flying lessons.
Wow.
Right, every bit of flying that I did was from me. I paid for it myself. My parents didn't help me. And people go, no, they did. And it was actually, technically, it was actually more expensive in those days. Back in the early 80s, there was a lot of problems with the cost of fuel. Fuel was actually effectively, equivalently more expensive than it is today. They had to call it the fuel crisis in those days, but it was more expensive to fly. And as we've already said, the airplanes I was flying burnt twice as much fuel as these ones today. So it was more expensive, but I did manage to pay for it myself. I don't know how to this day I did it, but it's really interesting. I'm going all over the place now, but I remember a young guy came up to me recently at one of these talks that I went to. He said, I want to be a pilot, but it's too expensive. And I said, is it an iPhone 16 Pro Max? And he went, yeah, it is. And I went, that's 8 flying lessons. Yeah. Right? I didn't
Priorities.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to have your priorities. I didn't have a fancy 10-speed racer like all my friends did. I didn't have an electric guitar like my friends did. And I didn't have a record player. They were the things in my day. I didn't have any of those things because it was all about, I want to be a pilot. I want to be like those 3 guys in the cockpit. And that's what I say to people, again, visualization. Have you heard that thing? Visualization. I did a talk recently at the Royal Aeronautical Society in London. That was a really proud moment to get up in front of 106 students or people learning to fly. And I gave a talk about visualization. And the short version is I said to them, imagine your mum or your dad, or both of them, sitting in seats 1A and 1B on a big jet one day. Picture what they're wearing. Picture your mum's hair. Picture the dress she's wearing. Picture the earrings she's wearing, the jewelry she's wearing. Picture your dad with a glass of scotch. And how many ice blocks are in that scotch? 4 or 5 ice blocks in the scotch, and your mum's got a glass of champagne. You can see the bubbles coming up in the champagne. You know, picture a really vivid image of your parents sitting in seats 1A and 1B in first class. They're sitting there knowing that you're flying the airplane. They're sitting there knowing and having told every single person they've met on the way to those 2 seats that their son or daughter is the captain, right? Imagine their faces now when you say, this is your captain speaking. Imagine their faces. They're crying. They're both crying with pride. If you visualize things like that, it'll make it happen. Visualization does work.
That makes total sense.
You've heard that before, but yeah. I've been doing that all my life. I visualize my next step in my career, where I'm going. Can I see myself in that Cessna 210? I'm going to get a 210 rating. I can see myself in the Cessna 310. I can see myself in a King Air. I want to fly a King Air. Right, Mitsubishi MU2, I wanted to fly that because that was a cool airplane. Mitsubishi MU2, so I could see myself flying that. And I used to, you know how we get kids and we sit them in the cockpit, right? Young kids, and they sit in the cockpit and I get photos with them in the cockpit. That's the same as me sitting in the back of that 727. That's today's version of that. Just a young kid sitting in the cockpit and this little boy or little girl thinks, wow, I can picture myself here. And that's the first stage of visualization. And as you go through life, if you make that more vivid and more real, it'll happen. Positive self-talk, have you had that? Positive self-talk is, you know when you say, I'm going to fail that exam, I'm not very good, right?
Yeah.
Don't do that, right? Nobody else is telling you you're good, right? Apart from your parents, nobody else wants to see you succeed in life. They don't. Even your best friends, they get a bit jealous if you do too well, don't they? That's life, that's natural, right? So you've got to be telling yourself you're good, right? You've got to say, that maths exam I've got coming up, that's tricky, but you know, I've done the work, I'm going to pass it. I'm going to pass it because I'm good. I've done the work, I'm good, I understand this. I've got a flight test coming up. I know about this, I know about that, I've done the right study. The training captain who's taking the test seems like a nice bloke. I'm going to show him how good I am. You have to do it, and you are going to fail along the way. So you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to pass, and you fail the test. You go, I failed the test because, I did that wrong. And again, try and find the positive out of the negatives, right? And that's the biggest problem, I think, with aviation. You are going to fail, right? Nobody gets through passing every single exam there is. And you don't want to, because failure is what makes you learn. We've all heard that. But when you do fail at something, just go, right, what did I do wrong? How can I be better at that? Find the thing that you need to be better at and be better at it. Concentrate on it, say, yeah, I'm good at that now. Yeah, I didn't understand how we had the parallel turn or the teardrop turn. I know that really well now, because I've studied on the board and I learnt it. I did it in the simulator. So yeah, visualization, positive self-talk, it does work. I did much the same as your students do here. I had no experience when I was 18 years of age. 9 months later, I'm a commercial pilot. I then had to get an instrument rating, but I didn't have any money, so I did an instructor rating. Did some instructing, like a lot of your students do here. And during the instructing, you actually learn to be a better pilot when you're showing somebody else what you've just learnt. So I did the instructor rating. I did maybe 6 months to a year of instructing. Then I could afford the instrument rating. After the instrument rating, I then was able to fly twin-engine aircraft, and I did charters. And as all young pilots know, 1 hour of flying training is a lot harder than 3 hours of doing a charter in a twin-engine aeroplane to a destination with some clients on board, right? The other funny thing is, and you'll see some of your students have it, when I was 18, 19 years of age, with about 500, 600 hours, right, nobody wanted to fly with me because I looked like a 19-year-old. So I grew this big, ugly, dirty moustache because I thought that would make me look older. It just made me look like a 19-year-old with a big, Burt Reynolds moustache. And in fact, I looked a bit like Freddie Mercury at the time. My nickname was Freddie. People used to call me Freddie. So yeah, Freddie, go and fly this airplane here. Freddie, can you do this? When you're 19 and it's difficult to get jobs because you look too young, I managed to get a job with the funeral directors. This is real, flying a 58 Baron. That's a model number, the 58 Baron, Beechcraft Baron, with the back doors open there. I used to fly bodies, dead people. Right? It's a chapter in my book coming out. It's called I Fly Dead People. And that's how I used to get hours flying a Baron. So Australia's a big country and people die in odd places, car accidents or many sorts of reasons they die. But their body needs to be transported maybe 12 hours in a car to the morgues in the city where they came from with their family. And so it's not really practical, but you can put them on an aeroplane. And I used to transport bodies. Like a 1 hour flight might be a 12-hour drive on the outback roads and things like that in Australia. So I used to fly this Baron out, and also, this is quite morbid, but the bodies would be in the hospital, right, cooling in like a morgue in a chiller. I'd fly up to a town in somewhere rural Australia, rural Victoria, New South Wales, in this 58 Baron, and then an ambulance would drive into the airport. This is in the old days when there was no fences and things. They'd just drive in the airport. I'd open the back doors, the body bag was loaded in, strap it down, and I used to fly off to Sydney or Melbourne or one of the major cities in Australia. I used to take friends along. So I'd say, hey, Matthew, I'm flying up to Shepparton tomorrow. You want to come along? Oh, you're flying a twin? Yeah, I'm flying a twin. You want to come along? Yeah, sure. So I'd take a mate with me, and he said, what do we do? I said, oh, it's just a cargo run. Because if I said I'm flying dead people, he wouldn't come. So we get up there. I remember one particular time with a friend of mine, Paul, and we're at this airport, Shepparton, and it was like beautiful, beautiful sunset, and we're just sitting there kicking the dust, right, standing next to the airplane. He said, when's the cargo coming? I said, oh, cool. He goes, oh, look at that. It's an ambulance driving into the airport. And I went, yeah, that's the cargo. What? And it was 2 bodies, and we loaded them in the back, and he didn't want to go anywhere near it. He said, I'm going to catch a train home. I said, there's no trains going tonight. The next one's tomorrow morning. It'll probably take 8 hours on the train. So he reluctantly got on board and we flew back and he kept looking around. And here's something they never tell you, and I learned pretty quickly, is you understand pressurized aircraft, right?
Oh.
Non-pressurized aircraft. So what I used to do is I used to fly really fast and then I'd pull back and climb really rapidly. And what happens is the air inside the body, right, with the depressurization comes out and the vocal cords still work. Yeah. So
Oh my God.
Yeah. So you'd be climbing out and you'd hear this.
Oh, God.
And I knew it was coming, and Paul didn't. And he'd go, hello, hello, hello. Anyway, I was 19. You do stupid things like that when you're 19.
That's a good way to build hours quickly.
It was a great way to build hours, flying for funeral directors. Yeah, and that was it. So I did a lot of work. It was Robbie Heritage Funerals, if he's still going. But I used to fly his aeroplanes all around Australia, repatriating bodies.
Wow.
And that was a good way. I also did, this is another thing about when you're a young pilot, you're desperate for hours, and there was a contract flying for the Navy, and it was flying a, what was it, an Aztec, right? I can't remember the PA on that one. PA, yeah. We're flying an Aztec. I flew a PA-31, which is a Chieftain as well, but we had a target out the back of the aircraft on 4,000 feet of cable. So the target was basically...
You were the target?
We were the target. The target was basically it looked like a windsock. It was about the same size as a windsock, but we turned it around the opposite way. So it was orange, like a windsock, and it used to go out the back of the aircraft through a little channel in the back of the aircraft that was fitted, and it was 4,000 feet of cable, and it was bright orange, and we used to fly over the naval gunnery range, and they would use live ammunition to shoot the target off.
Wow.
Yeah, so we'd fly over the target range or beside the target range and they go boom, boom, and you could feel it, the shockwaves in the aircraft. But I'm getting twin hours, you know, this is important twin hours. And somebody's shooting at me with live ammunition, boom, 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 and you feel it, really felt it.
Okay, so what you're saying is our CFIs have nothing to complain about.
No, they never got shot at. I used to get shot at with live ammunition, right? And the scariest thing about that, they rarely hit the target.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. If they hit the target all the time, you think, oh, they're good, these guys are good shots. They were training. So I was target practice, right? And I remember one day we went out to the aircraft because we'd been flying on a few foggy days, and some genius decided to paint the underside of the aircraft the same color as the target.
Oh my gosh.
No, they had to scratch that off. But yeah, I went, no, that's not a good idea.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And how's this? This to the US, right? So one day I was up at Nowra in New South Wales, and we had to go up there because the USS Missouri was coming in. One of your big ships was coming in. And that was just out of the harbour, just outside Sydney. And they said, oh, can you take the aircraft out there and do some target practice for the US Navy? Because they want to have a go at the target practice. I went, the US Navy, this is quite cool. And so we went out over the Pacific Ocean, on our side of the Pacific, and we were flying around doing circuit patterns over the Missouri. We had 4 targets. They hit 4 targets, one after another. They were good. The Americans were good. They never missed. Right? We did one run, boom, 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 target gone. Bring the cable in, attach another target out. Do another run, boom, 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 target gone. Yeah, no, the Australians never hit the target. Australian Navy, yeah. Leave it to the Yanks.
Now that you're pretty deep into your career in aviation, think you can afford that 10-speed bike and your record player now?
Yeah, I can. I've got lots of cool stuff now. Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. So this is another cool thing as well. I never got into flying for the money, right? You see so many young guys, and you'll see them here as well. They want to become a pilot because they think they look cool in Ray-Bans, or they want to drive a Porsche because that's what it shows in the movies and things like that. So no, that's the wrong reasons. You've got to love aviation, and that's why I say to a lot of people, I want to become a pilot. Okay, go and do your private license first. Do your private license and see if you like it. If you really love it, if you don't want to do anything else, become a pilot then. Because some people, they get through the private license and think, oh, I'm not sure if this is for me. And if there's anybody who's thinking, I want to be a pilot because I've seen how much they earn, don't do it for that reason, right? Do not do it for that reason. And this is a fact. I can't tell you what I earn. I don't know. I really don't. And that's not showing off. I don't know because it's not important, right? I earn enough to have the nice things in life now, you know, a house in France, and nice cars and beautiful holidays, and put my kids through university and all that stuff. But I still can't tell you how much I earn because I don't know. And I mean that because I've never done it for the money. I've always done it for the hours to get the job. And now that I've got that job, it's a great lifestyle. You know, it's not for everybody. You know, the long haul lifestyle is difficult. The short haul lifestyle, it depends on what you want out of life. The long haul lifestyle I've been doing for 30 years and it works for me, but not for everybody.
What would you say are some of the pros and cons of, you know, doing the long haul that you do?
So the long haul is, again, I think as a young kid, I became a pilot because I want to see the world. Okay, now we're going to go flying today. We're going to go to Catalina Island. I'm going to go and see Catalina. Fantastic, amazing. Short haul, you go to the same places out and back, and out and back, and out and back, and out and back. You're flying, which is cool. It's a cool job to be flying, but you're home every night, which is a good thing about it. but you're going to the same destinations every day. The only thing that changes is the weather. One day it might be sunny, one day it might be snowing. So short haul wasn't for me. I love short haul. I've done short haul. The good thing about short haul is it gives you lots and lots of experience, and you get lots and lots of flying, lots of takeoffs, lots of landings. So each day you might do 4 takeoffs and landings, whereas in long haul you might do 4 takeoffs and landings in a month.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's also better to start with short haul to get the experience, or get the flying out of your system, and then go into long haul. Whereas I see some pilots that get frustrated, they come straight to the long haul, and they're number one, they're not getting the same skills, and they're not getting them quickly, and it's almost like they're missing out on the flying.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, long haul's for me, and I couldn't go back to short haul. Getting up every day, going to work, putting a uniform on every day, right?
So what do you do now? How many of long haul flights in a month? How many would you do?
Average over a year with leave, probably about 4 a month. So I'm going somewhere every week. So this week I'm Los Angeles. I think next week I'll be in New York again. The week after that I got Delhi, and then I got to Mumbai into the next year.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, they're long haul flights. 7 to 10 hour flights. It was 10 hours 45 yesterday coming out here.
Wow. And then in terms of the length of time you've been in the career, how long have you been doing this?
So, like I said, I started flying when I was 18. I'm 61. That's 43 years, quick maths. See, I said I was rubbish at maths, but I'm good. 43 years, and I've got 26,000 flying hours.
Wow.
That's a lot, isn't it?
That is a lot.
Yeah. It's sort of like I want to try and go for the 30 now. We'll see how I go. Because as a pilot now, you have to retire at 65. When I started, it was 55. But when you're 18, and 55 is like older than your dad. So, but I've gone through that age now. I've gone through my 55th birthday, and now it's 65, the retirement age. And I do believe, because there is a massive shortage of pilots in the world, that they're thinking of upping it to 68. So maybe I'll get my 30,000 hours.
We'll see.
Before 68. But we'll see. That's the other thing I say to a lot of young pilots. When you're 18 in your early 20s, and you get into an airline in your early 20s if you're lucky, you are so concerned. Every 6 months you're so worried about your simulator checks, right? Your line checks and your LP license proficiency checks, operator proficiency checks. All you think is on your mind is every 6 months, I've got to go and do that simulator test. I've got to do that simulator test. You don't give a second thought about your medical.
Switches.
Yeah. When you get to my age, you just turn up for the sim, you get a pass, right? But yeah, your medicals. You go, can I see that chart? Right, sorry, what'd you say? Oh, am I hearing? What's my heart? And you go to do your blood pressure. I mean, yeah, it's really weird how that completely changes. Yeah, when you get to my age, you worry about the medicals every 6 months, but the sim, yeah, I'll pass.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's how it changes.
You're pretty big on Instagram now. What inspired you to start doing that?
That was during the pandemic. We just got our brand new Airbus A350 aircraft, amazing aircraft. And actually, it was my daughter who got me started. So my daughter, she was about 17 then, and she's flicking through her phone. I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm on the gram. And I went, what? She said, Instagram. I went, yeah, I've heard of that. What is it? And she showed me her phone, and it was all makeup tutorials and fashion and like handbags. I went, oh, okay. And she said, no, look at this, Dad. She typed in Airbus, because I fly an Airbus. I went, oh, that's an A350. I said, can you set me up an account? And she goes, what do you want to be called? I went, I don't know. She went, how about Captain Chris? I went, oh, that's got a ring to it. I like that. And so then I started putting pictures of, we were doing some training with our brand new aircraft up at Glasgow just before the pandemic. And I had this little joke with my daughter. I said, I'll see if I can get 500 followers on Instagram. She went, oh, you won't get 500 followers. So I posted some videos of the takeoffs and landings that we were doing just on the training, not with passengers, just training flights. And then I was taking photos of the cockpit and the interior of the cabin, and people were really interested in this sort of stuff. And the next thing, we got COVID. And that was horrible because about 50% of my colleagues throughout the industry were losing their jobs. And I was being senior and being a training captain and being on the A350, the one new aircraft that we had, I kept my job. And so I kept flying during the pandemic, and we were flying mainly cargo all around the world. And there was some really interesting flying. And I was like, documenting what we were doing. So today we're flying to Los Angeles, and our cargo today is bees. We had bees on board. Yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
Not enough bees in LA, apparently. We're bringing British bees to LA, stuff like that. And we were bringing out vaccines, and we were flying vaccines to South Africa. We were flying, this is a funny one, we were flying Atlantic salmon to London, and we were flying Scottish salmon to New York. We were flying fish across an ocean, but it was cargo, and things were being, I was basically letting people know that airplanes are still flying, even though people are stuck in their homes. we were still flying, and what we were flying and where we were flying it to. And I was basically trying to promote aviation, and I brought out this thing, my son helped me with this, called buy airline tickets like you bought toilet paper. And I had the old guy with the sign type thing in my captain's uniform saying buy airline tickets like you bought toilet paper, because people were buying toilet paper during the panic. And that just went viral. I didn't know what that meant, but viral, and viral during a pandemic, but it went viral. And all of a sudden people going, who's this Captain Chris guy? And I went, wow, I've got an audience now. So then I started promoting aviation, and I thought of things I wanted to just promote my airline. I wanted to tell people to keep buying tickets, because without people buying tickets, we've got no future in the industry. And also to let people know that had lost their jobs, aeroplanes are still flying. Aeroplanes will fly again, and we will all be flying again. So just as difficult as it is, and as hard as it is, we are going to go flying again. We are going to go flying. And I started a thing called Wingtip Wednesday as well, where I said, right, send in your photos every Wednesday of a photo you've taken out of the window with the picture with the wingtip of an aeroplane on a holiday you've been. And I used to post these every Wednesday, and there was about 150, 200 of them every Wednesday. I'd repost them of people's wingtip shots. And I used to do that. And then when the pandemic ended, people were then going on holidays and they had new photos. Hey, I'm going to Crete this week. I'm going to LA this week. And they were posting with their Wingtip Wednesday pictures. And that still goes today. And it's just like we've created a community online. When pilots were starting to come back, I was training them in the simulator to come back to normal line training. And every Friday I'd do a post of one of the pilots and say, here's Matthew. During the pandemic, Matthew delivered pizzas. He also helped his kids with their maths and all this sort of thing. And I called it Feel Good Friday.
Oh, wow.
So every Friday there'd be a new pilot coming back, and somebody I'd trained either in the simulator or on board. And what was really good is that one of your colleagues that was maybe a couple of seniority numbers junior to you would go, oh, Matthew's back now. That means they'll be calling me soon to come back. And it was just like really, really positive, because the airlines didn't know when they could get people back. So they were just getting people back when they could. And it was a way of basically keeping it positive in the industry and showing that things are coming back. And all the passengers were looking at this going, oh, they've got more pilots now. Airplanes are flying more. Maybe I'll buy a ticket. Maybe I'll plan to go to Barbados for my next holidays. And it was just a really, really positive thing. And now that people are back flying, well, it's been a couple of years now, I used Instagram for a different thing. I felt like I've had a really nice career. I've had a good career. It's been good to me. It's been difficult. It's been up and down. I've had 6 different airline jobs to where I am today. But I'm in a position now to use Instagram to inspire people, which is why I'm speaking to you guys here at Sling.
That's amazing.
To inspire people to say, it's a great career, it really is, and for all the right reasons, right? You've got to really love aviation, okay? Another one of the things I say to people is say, don't become a pilot because you think all pilots drive Porsches, because some have Ferraris. Actually, I drive a 25-year-old BMW, so it's just a crappy old car. But become a pilot because you really love flying, and the best way to do that is to go out and do a private flight. People are scared of flying. I've had some amazing stories. A lot of people have written to me and said, I'm really scared of flying. I don't like the turbulence. I don't like this. And I write to everybody that writes to me if I can. I remember there was one particular guy who wrote to me to say he's lost his job because he was so scared of flying that he couldn't travel for work. And he was really, really, and he said, but since seeing you on Instagram and you explain turbulence and you explain flying, he said, you'll forget this, but you wrote to me and said, go and take a flying lesson. That'll help you with your fear of flying. He said, I've not only taken a flying lesson, I've got my private license, and I love it so much I'm going for my commercial, and here's photos of me. So there's a guy who lost his job because he didn't like to be a passenger, and now is a commercial pilot. So that's a really nice feeling. And every single day somebody will write to me saying, I've just done my first solo, I've just got my twin rating, I'm now qualified as a commercial pilot, I've just got a job with Ryanair, I've just got a job. Every single day somebody writes to me, and it's really, really nice. And that's why I do it.
Hearing your whole story of how you got into everything from such a young age and your passion, I mean, that must just feel amazing getting that many young people communicating with you.
And the thing is, people say to me, they go, how much do you earn from Instagram? I go, I've earned that much. I'm not doing it for the money. It's like being a pilot. I don't do it for the money. I love the situation I have now, whereas I get to come here to Los Angeles. I get to speak to the people at Sling. We get to go flying. We go for lunch. We fly light aircraft. I mean, that's what I'm doing it for. And like I said, and the payback is these incredible stories that arrive on my phone every single day of somebody whose life I've helped to inspire.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool.
Speaking of shortages, there's a Boeing shortage right now, and the media is really painting that as, oh, the pilot shortage is over, there's less demand. What do you think about that?
No, there's a huge pilot shortage now, right? The pandemic, prior to the pandemic, I know these statistics, prior to the pandemic, 50% of airline pilots were over the age of 50 worldwide.
Wow.
That's a big number. So during the pandemic, a lot of those guys, my age group, decided they liked fishing, they liked playing golf, and they didn't come back. And so you found that 50% of that 50%, 25% of the world's most experienced airline pilots didn't come back to flying post-pandemic.
Wow.
And that meant it was great for everybody underneath because everybody moved up a step. FOs became captains, captains became captains of bigger aircraft, and everybody moved up a step. But this swell has still created a massive shortage of pilots down the bottom end, which is where you guys come in. And I still think it's going to take years to basically train those people. There is not enough pilots in the world, and this is why Airbus is talking about single pilot cockpits. And it's not because they want it, it's because they might have to go that way because there really isn't enough people learning to fly.
I mean, I heard just in the US, over Thanksgiving week, there was over 18,000 canceled flights.
Yep, and it's happening all over the world now. And that's pilot shortage. Pilot shortage, that's the only one it is. And the airlines don't like to talk about it, but it's really difficult getting pilots. Because my age group, they're retiring. And that's the experience, is leaving the business, and they need to get people in at the other end. And you guys, I mean, you guys are doing your bit. You've gone from like 20 students to over 300 students, so you're doing your bit. But we need a lot more than 300 pilots.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to do it ourselves.
No. Every flying school in the world needs to start getting people in and learning to fly. And people need to realize it's a great career.
We talked about it in a very roundabout way.
Yep.
But do you have any specific advice for people who are considering the career and they just haven't quite made the first step yet? What do you have to say to them?
It's easy to make an excuse of why you don't want to be a pilot. It's easy to say, I've heard there'll be single pilot cockpits in the future. I've heard it's about $100,000 to become a pilot. I've heard. It's easy to make excuses to not become a pilot. The best way is to just start with a private license. Just start it like you want to start a really cool hobby, right? Flying airplanes as a hobby is very, very cool. So find a flying school like Sling Pilot Academy, do your first few lessons, go solo, because that's a major step. Once you fly an airplane solo, that's like you're a pilot, right? And once you go solo, you'll know if it's for you or if it's not. And for most people who go solo, you'll think, yeah, I want to go further. Once you get your private license, just go do a bit of flying, and you will know if it's a career for you at that stage, guaranteed. Because you'll sit there and think, yeah, I could do this for a living. This would be amazing, right? Or, do you know what? I'm just happy just flying on the weekends. And you'll know, I think it's natural.
Yeah. So you heard it here first. Go check out a plane, get in it, give it a flight, and you'll see if it's for you.
That's the best way.
If you could tell your younger self one thing, or maybe even a couple, what advice would you give?
That's a really good question, because I've never been asked that question. And we think of this all the time, don't we? So my younger self, I think I'm just going to say, you're going to get there. You're going to get there. I had this dream of being an international airline captain, and there was many moments in my career when I remember my dad saying, oh, maybe you should have stuck with art. I was really good at art. Every time I'd lost a job or I was not flying much and things like that, he said, oh, maybe you should have stuck with art. You were good at that. So saying to my younger self, I would have been, my dad didn't know, he was a builder. Right, but I would have said to myself, don't worry, you'll be fine. You'll get there, you'll get there. You will get there, you've got to believe in yourself. Because my parents didn't understand what I'm telling you out there, visualization, how important it is to visualize your future. It sounds really weird and people go, oh, I don't get that. It works. Visualize, be specific about what seat you're going to be sitting on and what sort of aircraft and where you're going to be flying to. It does work. And also the positive self-talk. It's a new thing for people to talk good to yourself, talk well to yourself. Talking to my younger self, I'd say, you're going to get there. You'll be fine.
Are you excited to fly the high wing today for the first time?
The high wing, yeah. So I had a look at the high wing out there. So I've flown the TSI, and the TSI is like a 21st century of the PA-28 that I used to fly. It's the real deal. It's like the best, single engine, low wing aircraft I could ever think of flying. And then I saw the high wing and I went, hang on, I flew Cessna 150s, 152s, 172s, 182s, 210s. I've flown all the Cessnas with the high wing. And the thing I loved about the high wing is you just get a much better view. And when you're a private pilot, or even when you're learning to fly, it's looking down is where you get your navigation from. And with the wing underneath you miss some of the ground. So the high wing is actually better for navigation. Also, the other thing, you're in California here, and it's really sunny and hot. Having the wing over your head is like having a bit of protection, having a roof over your head. So actually, I'm excited to see how that works.
I'm excited to see how you fly it.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, well, thank you for coming in today. We really appreciate you doing this interview.
You're welcome.
All the people watching are just going to get some really great advice from you.
Hopefully. It's a bit cozy, isn't it?
Yeah, there you go. That's what Rob said. We're looking into each other's eyes.
This is really cozy.
How would they fart though? Would you have to go down?
No, the same thing is
Same
the
thing, it's
the
just the
air is in the
pressure.
body, and it comes out through there, right? And you hear,
That's
hello,
hilarious.
hello, hello.